Good evening, good afternoon, good morning for all our delegates globally. Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your belt to witness one of the best panel discussion of this conclave. This is because of the topic. The topic is coaching competency must to have for HR leaders. Wow, what a topic. Many companies say HR is a quality. I think that's going to be very important for setting up the coaching competencies through HR for HR leaders as well as for organization. And also good to know that this panel will be having a 75 minutes of session. And about the panel is a veterans in HR and coaching areas. They are corporate leaders and they have been in HR areas as well as coaching areas for a very long time. And I was very amazed to see their preparation for this panel as a team. It was having goosebumps everywhere when they were doing the preparation. So I want to share that to you upfront so that you can have a complete feel in the session. About the session, I think the time has come now, HR leaders to focus on coaching initiatives in organizations. Considering the turbulent changes, traditional development interventions, and becoming less productive and successful, executive coaching provides an innovative opportunity to enable HR initiative be in sync with business vision. Demonstrating mindful presence while engaging diverse workforce, while driving changes, makes it incumbent upon HR professional to develop coaching competencies themselves and also impact to the organization. I am very privileged and honored to introduce the panel to you. Mr. R.R. Nair, Carrie Amber from ICF, and Mr. Arvind Agarwal, who is a renowned MCC in India. So let me introduce each one of them one by one. R.R. Nair is well-known HR guru of India, a CXO coach, OD consultant, an advisor cum independent director. He has masters from Kerala University and postmaster from IIT Kharagpur. He is expert in industry psychology and management and also trained by Tavistock, UK, alumnus of Michigan and Stanford universities. He has served Unilever, one of the best companies in the world, and subsidiaries for over 3 decades as a CHRO. Wow. He has produced lot of leaders for that organization. And also associated with ISB on leadership programs, a past president of NHRDN Bangalore, CFI fellow. He has won a lot of national awards and also lifetime achievement awards from NHRD and CNBC KPMG. R.R. Nair, welcome sir for this panel.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Carrie Abner. She is in an association management executive and over 2 decades of experience at International Coach Federation Council of State Governments and International Council of Volunteer Action. As a Vice President of ICF Credentials and Standards, Carrie works on certification of coach practitioners and ensures highest standards for professional coaching practices. Carrie holds a master's degree in International Affairs and Development from George Washington University. Welcome, Carrie, to be part of this panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now to our moderator, Dr. Arvind Agarwal. He is partner in Global HR Lead Partners. He graduated from IIT Kharagpur, holds PhD from IIT Bombay, and management from IIM Ahmedabad, and during illustrious career spanning over 4 decades across Xerox, Escorts, JCB and RPG Enterprises, Dr. Agarwal has served in human resource as well as business roles, including CEO for 5 years. Dr. Agarwal is well-known MCC in India and worldwide, and he has got MCC from ICF and is executive coach and leadership organization development consultant. And he is also a certified EQ expert coach and offers services globally. Welcome, Dr. Arvind Agarwal. And I hand over the panel to you for your take up the panel for the further discussions.
Thank you, Arindan. Welcome all of you to this session today. Good morning, Carrie. And good evening, RR.
Good evening.
What a pleasure to be with both of you today. These are very unusual times, the years of pandemic. During these last couple of years around the world, I think the importance of HR has really come in the forefront like never before. And I know many of my friends who are CHROs in very large companies, small companies. They've been running around to organize hospital beds. They've been running around to get oxygen, to get remdesivir injection. And now they are busy organizing vaccination for their people. They were never probably trained for such eventualities. And Carrie, in India particularly, we went through fair share of turmoil, as is well known around the world. But it's been no different in most parts of the world from what we learned from media reports. And, HR professionals always have varied responsibilities. None of those have reduced. To sustain the continuity of the business and to keep the business growing, all of those responsibilities continue. These are additional challenges that has come on their shoulders. Now, despite best of intention, many of them had to see their friends jobless. They had to trigger salary cuts. They had to somehow make the two ends meet for their organization. And yet, they had to care for people. They had to champion people's causes. So they were really caught between the hard place and a rock. Under these circumstances, it's great to have this conversation about coaching competencies. We talk about leader as a coach. And here we talk about HR professional in their leadership role inside the organization, what kind of coaching competencies they can display in dealing with this kind of a varied responsibility they have. So friends, we are very fortunate today. We have eminent experts. Carrie herself, you heard her background. RR, who at least for audience such as this, which comprises of largely coaches and human resource professionals from around the world, need no introduction. So we're very, very fortunate. So without much ado, I would now invite our eminent speakers. And may I request, Carrie, for you to lead the present sharing of your thoughts, and that will be followed by RR, and we will then go into question and answer. Over to you, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Arvind. And thank you for setting the stage up so well for us and for this important conversation. I think one of the things that you emphasize that is so important is remembering the very human element of human resources professionals and the important work that they do all of the time, but certainly in the last 2 years, which has been quite dramatic and significant and so incredibly valuable at the individual level and the organizational level. I am so really just tremendously proud to be with you all today, and I really appreciate the opportunity. It's such an honor to be here as part of ICF India Conclave. Thank you, Arvind, for hosting us, for Arvind for being our facilitator, and again, setting us up so well, to my co-panelist, RR, to VJ, chair of the India Conclave this year, to Gauri Ramani, who initially invited me to be part of this incredible gathering, and to Uday for all of your work to coordinate and to support us as we prepare for this important conversation and discussion. It's really exciting for me to be able to see such a powerful coming together of ICF India chapters to create space for for these important discussions, to create space for networking, for the sharing of wisdom and expertise and best practice, particularly in these challenging days. We need one another more than ever. And so thank you for making this space available and possible. And just an acknowledgement that takes such a great deal of work to do. So I am very grateful. I'm sure the rest of the participants are also really grateful to have this opportunity to be together and to learn from one another. Thank you to all involved in making this happen. And thank you to all of the participants in this discussion for spending part of your day or evening with us to participate in this conversation. So I want to start a little bit with the question is, why is coaching so important for human resources professionals? You know, the world of work is moving at rapid pace, faster than ever before. And responding to the dynamic markets, evolving customer demands, rapidly changing challenges and resources means organizations and businesses must maintain an innovative mindset to remain relevant and succeed. And organizations are working with an increasingly global framework where technologies allow for global teams, and finding, recruiting, and hiring the right talent is no longer limited by geographical boundaries. Add to this mix, of course, the global, social, environmental, economic, and political challenges that, as we have seen, have significant impact and often abrupt impact on organizations and business, creating a landscape of change, ambiguity, and uncertainty, which can have tremendous impact on organizations' success. You know, in the medium and long term, these external uncertainties and changes can bring about positive innovations that can drive businesses into the future. Sustaining the energy for dramatic and unexpected changes like this, however, can be incredibly challenging in the moment for both organizations and their employees. Certainly, we have been living in one of those moments over the past 2 years, as Arvind so clearly and eloquently described. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to understand, to wrap our heads around, and to manage, both at the individual level and certainly at the organizational level. And for organizational human resource leaders, it means that business as usual may no longer be enough to keep pace in this dynamic new world of work. Recruiting, managing, developing, sustaining, and retaining talent across organizations requires totally different strategies than it did just a decade ago. And I think that's really where coaching can come in and add value. In this context of near constant change, uncertainty, and ambiguity, coaching is emerging as a powerful differentiator for organizations and businesses to thrive, equipping them to retain, nurture, and develop talent, to harness the diverse ideas and innovative thinking across and at all levels of their workforce, and to build workforces that are nimble, agile, and able to pivot to meet the shifting demands and constraints of the marketplace. But why coaching, and how can it contribute to the success of organizations, the HR leaders within them, and their workforce? I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that, but first, I really want to be sure that we're clearly defining coaching and a couple other terms that we'll use in our discussion today. These will probably be familiar to almost everybody here, but I just always think it's really good to start with very clear definitions. So what do we mean by coaching? ICF defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. When I talk about a coach practitioner, I'm primarily talking about an individual who provides that ongoing partnership with clients to help them produce fulfilling results in their personal and professional lives, to provide support to enhance skills, resources, and creativity that the client already has within them. To be a coach practitioner, ICF typically means someone who has completed a minimum of 60 hours of coach-specific training and is doing this role in an ongoing and regular basis. But I'm also going to talk about today, and I imagine we'll talk about in this larger discussion around managers and leaders who are using coaching skills. And I want to define what I mean by that as well. When I say a manager or leader who uses coaching skills, I mean a manager or leader within an organization who works with subordinates to create awareness and support behavior change. And this can be accomplished using coaching knowledge, approaches, and skills. These individuals may and often do have some coach-specific training, and they integrate their coaching knowledge and skills within their existing roles. They may not provide coaching services, however, beyond that. So what I'd like to do is get a sense of those who are in this virtual room that we have to see where your roles are within your organization. So I'm going to publish a poll here, and I would love for you to jump in and respond to this poll and just see the roles that are present in our discussion today. So we've got some HR professionals here, some professional coach practitioners, many coach practitioners, no surprise, and some leaders and managers who use coaching skills, as well as some other folks. This is great. So we have a nice mix here. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating. That's really helpful to me. Let's see. Well, I'm really glad that we have a mix of your perspectives and insights in the discussion. I think that will really add value to the questions and responses that we're able to provide. So let's talk really quickly, and I want to be mindful of my time, to talk about what coaching can offer rather to organizations and to HR leaders, as well as to other managers and leaders within organizations. According to research by the Human Capital Institute, 77% of human resources practitioners and leaders reported that their organization is in a state of constant change with shifting priorities and strategies. This probably comes to no surprise to any of you who are in this panel discussion today, participating and listening in. In this type of complex landscape, there are several things that organizations need to be able to do in order to thrive. They need to be able to truly engage their employees. Employees need to feel vested in the organization, that their ideas and contributions are valued, and that they are an important part of the organization's success. Organizations also need to be able to create an adaptive environment. While it's important for organizations to have a clear vision for itself and for its teams, creating capacity for agility and shift to respond to changes in the marketplace is more important now than ever before. Organizations also need to promote a culture of learning and development. Employee learning and development at all levels is pivotal, not only to those individuals' success, but to the collective success of their organizations. Organizations need to build trust. In order to contribute their best thinking and work, employees need to have trust in the organization or business. They also need to have trust in the members of their teams they're working with. Transparency, clear communication, relationship building, listening and respecting are all key elements of building trust across an organization. And finally, organizations must nurture innovative thinking. This is so critical, particularly today. Organizations must create a space that allows for creative thinking and experimenting to foster innovation. That means organizations must create spaces where it is safe for employees and teams to try something new, to fail, and to learn from those trials for future refinements. When adopted into the culture of an organization, coaching can support each of these elements and help build an environment where both individual and collective engagement, learning and growth, and innovation contribute to overall success. In fact, organizations that integrate coaching into organizational effectiveness see improvements in their retention, teamwork, motivation, workplace relationships, and job satisfaction. So finally, I kind of want to briefly talk about some of the highlights of how HR leaders can really play a pivotal role in bringing in coaching and establishing a coaching culture within their organization. And so I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 different ways that HR leaders can play a role in this. The first is integrating coaching skills into human resources roles. You know, as Arvind mentioned at the very top of our session, HR leaders have such a varied responsibilities in their roles, and a challenging role. And coaching can help support HR leaders in the conversations that they have, both good and bad, with employees, to help support employees in their ongoing learning and growth and development in the organization, to provide a more inclusive environment for sharing of new ideas and shift from training to asking questions, and just providing a space where these questions, these conversations can happen within the organization. In addition to HR leaders integrating coaching skills within their own roles, they can also contribute, promote, and champion the development of a culture of coaching within, across, and throughout the organization. The Human Capital Institute and ICF research found that a successful coaching culture typically includes 3 different modalities of coaching. And when I talk about a coaching culture within an organization, we're typically talking about these 3 modalities, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, hopefully, in our discussion. They include internal coaches providing coaching. So having embedded internal coaches within the organization is really important. Also, having external coaches providing coaching within the organization. So bringing in those who are not hired and employed by the organization, but to provide coaching to their employees can also be very powerful. And then the third, you've already heard me talk about it so far, is managers and leaders who integrate coaching skills into their roles within the organization. And with these three components, organizations can build a really powerful coaching culture. And HR leaders can be a real champion and advocate for that. An additional way that HR leaders can stay part of this important work is to stay informed about, use, and share critical coaching resources that can support coaching at the individual and organizational levels. And ICF can be an important partner in that. Through the ICF core competencies, you're probably aware that late last year, we published team coaching competencies that can be another really important source of information and guidance to coaches within organizations. Recognizing the importance of using ICF credentialed coaches who have demonstrated meeting highest standards in professional and ethical practice, both internal and external to the organization. And also accredited ICF coach-specific training programs to support, sustain an organization's culture of coaching and to help train coaching skills within the organization. And also leveraging resources available across the ICF, including, as we're here today, the global network of ICF chapters who bring so many valuable resources to individual coach practitioners as well as to organizations who use coaching. To the ICF global family organizations, including ICF Credentials and Standards, the organization that I'm so privileged to represent, ICF Coach Training, and of course, we have a brand new organization within our framework, which is ICF Coaching and Organizations, that can be just a tremendous support to organizations that are trying to do this great work. We also have so many products and services available across the organization, including our academic and industry research initiatives. Some of their work I've already cited in my talk so far, and we'll talk about a little bit more later. We've got continuing education opportunities. And of course, opportunities like this where we bring together coaches and those who benefit and take advantage and recognize the power of coaching for important networking opportunities and learning. And finally, I want to ask the question, as HR leaders, knowing the tremendous load and burden that you and they carry, are you receiving, experiencing, and benefiting from coaching? That's a powerful tool for you as well to receive, as well as to provide and make accessible to those across your organizations. So I look forward to the continued conversation, and at that, I will send it back to Arvind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. Indeed, very ambiguous world that we live in. And HR role, the picture that you presented is enormous, and it's compoundingly becoming more challenging as we go forward. We would have many questions to explore your thoughts further, but we will come back to you in a minute. So, RR, as I would prefer to address you, if it is okay, as I have always known you over the years, taking that liberty. Would love to hear your thoughts. You've been celebrated CHRO of Unilever with your global experience, and also having coached CEOs around the world and CXOs around the world. How do you see this?
Thank you, Arvind. And that's really a privilege to really be part of this panel. I really start with a quote from Carl Jung, because that's quite relevant.
Right.
I'm not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And I think this resonated in me early on. And therefore, how we choose a response to life circumstance is a choice. And coaching is probably the most customized individual solution that is available to trigger people to look for possibilities and choices. And the topic, therefore, is extremely important when it comes to the relevance of coaching and coaching competencies for HR professionals. Strangely enough, way back in 2000, Daniel Goleman undertook a study, and the findings were reported in the Harvard Business Review. And what it came out in 2000 was that leaders ranked coaching as their least preferred style. Now, 21 years have passed, and we have heard, of course, Carrie talking about how vibrant ICF has evolved as an institution. So from a tell and sell mode, leaders are now learning the art of asking and listening. And I think that's a big shift that seemed to have happened. And at the same time, it's useful for us to listen to what the CEOs have to say. It seems to me, and I might sound a bit controversial, that CEOs are yet to equate the CFOs with the CHROs. Somewhere along the line, the CFOs seem to come across as fact-based and as a stronger point of view on financial capital. And is there an opportunity for coaching competencies to help CHROs to become even more confident to establish a point of view courageously on issues relating to organizational performance? Often, CEOs also make a reference to CHROs by saying that they seem to be preoccupied with transactional stuff. And therefore, there is need for them to devote more time on transformational agenda. And it is in the transformational arena that coaching competencies become even more relevant. Undoubtedly, coaching competencies can strengthen, as professionals, our contribution to the transformational agenda. And HR function is dramatically transforming, both pre and post pandemic. And many are riding the wave. And Arvind, you talked about it in your introduction. And at the same time, avoid the temptation for attractive distraction by taking up far too many initiatives. Instead, can we stay focused on a few, on a vital few, and focus on execution? Emerging topics like nature of work, future of business models, 21st century workforce, etc., are inherently dynamic topics on which HR professionals using HR competencies need to go into great depth, probably a research orientation. And Arvind, with your PhD, it only legitimizes that I find a number of CHROs are now taking on research degrees to go into great depth on some of these issues, which are of futuristic value. And those who are certified should also make sure, and that's a point of observation, Carrie, that they should not see it as a passport. how do each one of us as accredited coaches can renew, can refresh, can reimagine, and get ourselves challenged and supported by peer coaches and also by business leaders. And the last point is that there is a guaranteed invitation for CHROs and senior HR professionals as we assume a greater and impactful role to fundamentally alter the culture of organizations, to get invited as a member of the board of enterprises. And that would actually enable CHROs to build institutions in perpetuity. That in sum would be my introductory comments, Arvind.
Thank you very much, RR. And as is expected, I think you have opened the boundaries for HR professional taking the role beyond transactional and getting bogged down into those trivial matters, though they may be important, to a transformational agenda. And both of you have highlighted opportunity, and at the same time, both of you have also said these are requirement of a CHRO. Changing world, an ambiguous world, the global context in which we are operating, this has become a necessity. It's not a choice. So, number of questions that have come up in my mind, and I'm just wanting to check with Carrie, you, and RR. So, when we think about coaching competencies, there is a long list. ICF has a list, and I'm sure there are other such lists around the world. So regardless to which list you follow, there are a number of coaching competencies. So when you look at HR leaders, which are the top 2 or 3 competencies which, Carrie, you believe are fundamental and a must for an HR professional?
Great. It's really hard to say just 2 or 3. That's the big challenge, Arvind. There's so much so much that I value that I think some of the coaching competencies can bring to HR leaders and to their practice. But if I had to choose just a couple, I think something that's really important to keep in mind really falls within what we call coaching ethics, or demonstrates ethical practice, which is part of the ICF core coaching competency model, and particularly as it pertains to confidentiality. There are nuances within an organization that are different than individual coaching conversations between an individual coach practitioner and an individual client outside of an organizational context. And it's really important for HR professionals to be very clear with the limits to confidentiality and the expectations of the organization around that. And that varies from organization to organization. But being really clear and transparent with an employee on the limits around confidentiality as it pertains to coaching ethics, I think is really, really important. Additionally, cultivating trust. I mentioned that in some of my opening remarks. It's so important within an organizational context. It's a key factor for success. Research by Gallup shows that 96% of engaged employees trust their management, as compared to only 46% of disengaged employees. So establishing and maintaining a trust within an organization is really critical. Highly trusted workplaces show 50% higher employee productivity, more engagement at work, fewer sick days taken by employees, et cetera. The list goes on. And their research also showed that companies with high levels of trust outperform companies with low levels of trust by 186%. So there's a business reason and justification for creating that trust within the organizational context. So establishing and cultivating trust and safety would be an important competency. The other one that I would mention is listens actively. And that goes hand in hand with cultivating trust, listening to understand, making sure that that both parties to the conversation are really comprehending each other and understanding one another. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Carrie. You talked about ethical practice. You talked about confidentiality. You talked about trust and safety, and your safe space. And you're talking about listening actively. These are the 4 competencies fundamental that could be used for an HR leader. Yeah, resonates well with me over the years. If I look back to my HR days, certainly all of those would be fundamental to being a successful HR professional. Let me turn to RR. From your perspective, what would you say would be a core coaching competencies which would be very essential for HR leader?
Well, I would really say that from my perspective, I would just pick up 3. One is actually coaching agreement.
Okay.
Importance of client goals. Alignment amongst all the stakeholders.
Okay.
Exploring if there are additional topics that will come up in the course of coaching.
Right.
A related aspect of coaching agreement has to do with the midpoint and the end of engagement review. Right. This is something which I find needs to be strengthened. And I'm talking both in terms of MNCs and large Indian multinationals.
Right.
The important competency relating to coaching agreement and coaching contracting is the level of understanding that you need to provide as a HR professional to the external coach in trying to understand the organizational context.
Right.
The second competency I would pick up is powerful questioning. For us, for a HR professional, it is so significant and important. Right. And the way to really look at it is what's the difference between a slice of onion and a slice of potato? Obviously, there are layers. And how do you actually go into the depth of issues, especially when you are handling transformational issues? Open-ended, be curious, the power of silence to help to become more self-aware.
Yeah.
And what are the ways by which HR professionals can encourage people, including the external coach, to really work around diverse orientation and background of the leaders in order that they are fully aligned to the challenges of the future.
Right.
And how to define the next course of action. And the last competency was essentially in the area of designing actions to apply new insights, key learnings. How do you actively experiment? What are some of the pedagogy that we need to develop constantly to improve the transfer of insights into the real world of work?
Right.
I would say these 3 would be the competencies that HR professionals in particular should focus.
Right. Wonderful. So you've added 3 to Carrie's list of 4. These are namely agreement. And of course, you expanded on the nuances around the agreement, powerful question, and designing action. So if I add 4 plus these 3, 7, not many left.
That's true.
So I think those of you who are having successful HR track record should definitely reach out to Carrie for credentialing, and you would most probably qualify. But taking this conversation forward, RR, what would be some of the pitfalls if we look at the other side? Some coaching pitfalls which HR leaders need to watch out for?
The common one that I am experiencing as an HR professional and also as a coach would include not being clear about what is coaching and what is not coaching.
Yeah, I see.
Not being clear on the need to maintain confidentiality and what is good for the client. It's a bit of a dilemma. Focusing on the organizational agenda only.
Okay.
Unrealistic expectations of coaching outcome is yet another pitfall. Often contracting a coach when derailers have already set in, too late. And that's quite unfair, both for the coach and also for the leader. And not being grounded in both the art and science of coaching process. Very, very important. It seems to me it is not just science, it is art and science. And the last one, not displaying the courage to express a point of view on coaching culture. Because often specificity is lacking, and we shouldn't get into that trap.
Wonderful. I will come in a moment about the coaching culture, close to my heart, and kind of background that you come from, RR. There's been plenty around coaching culture that's been developed inside the organizations you've worked for. But in a moment, I would love to listen to Carrie, her thoughts about considerations the HR professionals may need to keep in mind when they're using coaching skills.
Mm-hmm. This is such a great question, and I would really echo RR's comments, particularly on the need for clarity in explaining the difference between coaching and some of the other roles that a human resources leader or another leader within an organization might play: counseling, mentoring, training, all of these different pieces, to be very clear on what coaching is and what is not, and those distinctions. You know, another thing that I would mention, it's really important that even individuals who are simply integrating coaching skills into their everyday role, but are not considering themselves professional coach practitioners, training on how to use the coaching competencies and skills is still really important. So just by, saying, hey, I want to kind of integrate and adopt a kind of a coaching approach, and I think I can read through this document and be equipped to do that, that's not sufficient. Even those who are serving in leader capacities, in HR capacities, et cetera, they need to have some training on how to use those coaching skills effectively. And again, going back to RR's point, I mean, how those coaching skills differentiate and are distinct from some other skill sets that may seem similar and perhaps not as clear to those who are not familiar with coaching. We're finding that a lot of individuals who consider themselves managers or leaders are getting high quality coach training programs. They're recognizing the importance of that. And that's really important. It may not be pivotal that a manager or leader complete, a full accredited coach training program of 125 hours plus. But we are seeing many who find it really important to get that level of training. But regardless, some fundamental foundational training in coaching competencies is really critical. And HR leaders can help provide that within their organizations for themselves and to others within the organization.
Oh, indeed. Absolutely, Carrie. Thank you so much. So nicely put. And I will now come back to the question that I had left hanging for RR. You come from a place which is famous as a CEO factory. And you've been an architect of building a culture where leader built leaders. So help us understand, as an HR professional, what can one do to develop that coaching culture inside an organization? RR, you're on mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arvind. The whole topic on coaching culture and culture is an extremely interesting topic. And the most admired automotive company in the world, the largest one, just guess, Toyota. And there are at least about 35 books written about the culture of Toyota, but no one has been able to copy it. Unilever that way, and I'm truly privileged for the 3 decades plus experience and having worked my way up in Unilever in India. I would really say that it is an amalgam of a lot of things that have happened over time. And I think if I were to go back in time, a chairman like Mr. P.L. Tandon, who thought of bringing in the culture of ization of management, that it is important to grow local management and local talent. So, what are some of the things that are very unique about the culture? Let me illustrate with a few examples as fast as I can. One is meritocracy.
Right.
In this company, bosses become subordinates and subordinates becomes bosses. No issue.
Okay.
Management trainees, they are actually coached, but they assess all the coaches and who are all very significant leaders of the company.
Right.
And the management trainees have the opportunity to give feedback how good you are as a coach.
Yeah.
And if a guy is not fully measuring up, the CHRO of the company can write a very polite and nice letter as well as a communication to say that, look, can you actually get off the bus? Until you show the improvements, it will be difficult for you to actually support one of our management trainees.
Right.
And that is the clarity and the candidness with which you are trying to groom future talent in the coaching arena. And I think Carrie made a wonderful point that at the end of it, all people leaders have to use coaching as part of their leadership repertoire.
Right.
But they require, as she put it again very nicely, the requisite skills. And therefore, I think as an organization, we constantly equip people with the necessary coaching skills to become effective people leaders. And Unilever philosophy is constantly to strive hard to develop competencies among internal coaches, purpose driven coaches. Equally, the organization encourages external coaches, but contracting and engaging and the matchmaking process, both internal and external, have to be complementary. It is not either or, it is both. And I think we have sustained it over the last about 9 generations. I might have been associated for 3 generations during the period of my stay.
Right.
Lastly, if I can add a few more,
Mm-hmm.
grooming successors is a vital requirement for leaders. In fact, their reward system is closely linked to your capacity to grow talent. And also, if you lose out, you also risk your variable pay. So, early identification of potential and use of predictive tools are very important. Lessons from pandemic, of course, is that we have to be compassionate. At the same time, can we be direct and transparent in terms of standards of performance are concerned? Both have to be managed adroitly. And employer brand is very, very key.
Yeah.
Most preferred employer status is what HUL has been able to successfully ensure in the course of last several years. Diversity and inclusion, physically challenged executives and managers at this point of time in 2000, by 2022, we are aiming at gender neutral.
Yeah.
And lastly, culture cannot be replicated easily. This has to be customized, and this need to be specifically designed around the organizational purpose and the organizational ethos. So all in all, these would be some of the examples I can illustrate why HUL has become a leadership factory.
No, I became very nostalgic when I was hearing you, because you mentioned Prakash Tandon, and I was still a student in IIM Ahmedabad when he came over. And I think at that time he had already moved from Hindustan Lever to Punjab National Bank on government's invitation to lead the public sector bank. And what an inspiring, and it was an impactful session that I had. And you had, of course, several years of working experience with him and co-architecting the culture of the company to become a really coaching culture. Thank you, RR. You also mentioned about diversity and inclusion. And I wanted to check with Carrie on that subject of diversity and inclusion, which has become high priority topics among HR professionals around the world. How do coaching core competency help in making that happen inside the organization?
This is such a great question. Thank you so much. And RR, I really appreciate your kind of bringing this in. Of course, this is such an important topic. And it's honestly been a really important conversation within the coaching profession for many years. I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about some of the work that ICF Global has done in the past 2 or 3 years that has brought in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and integrated that directly into the competencies and how that can help HR professionals and organizations as they're taking on these issues within their businesses. In 2017, ICF began a research initiative known as a job analysis. And for those of you in HR, this is probably a very familiar process. It provides the foundation for a lot of job descriptions that you might develop and publish. But a job analysis also provides important research and data needed to develop a professional competency model, like the ICF core competencies for coaching. And it also provides the foundation or basis for a certification and a certification examination, like the ICF credentialing process and the ICF coach knowledge assessment and other exams. As part of any type of job analysis, subject matter experts who are practitioners in that particular field provide input on the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that are important for practice within that field. So when ICF conducted its coaching job analysis from 2017 to 2019, we heard very loudly and clearly from thousands of coaches around the world. And mostly what we heard was that the skills outlined in the original core competencies were totally relevant, important, and timely for coaching practice today. But we also received important data on new elements that are critical for coaching in today's world, elements that you've probably noticed in the updated core competency model. Primary among those embodies a coaching mindset. This coaching mindset involves developing a mindset that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered, including remaining aware of, open to the influence of context, culture, identity on both self and others, and engaging in curious learning and development on an ongoing basis. We also heard very clearly from coach practitioners who participated in the job analysis that understanding a client's context, culture, context, and identity is really important for effective coaching. Having a holistic understanding of the whole person of the client allows for a deeper level of partnership that can support transformation and growth. And so you'll see these elements throughout the core competencies embedded, elements of identity, elements of culture, and context throughout the 8 updated core competencies, from cultivates trust and safety to listens actively and evokes awareness. And at the heart of each is genuine curiosity, a willingness to listen, to understand, to learn, to demonstrate respect and non-judgment, all skills that can help individuals, including HR professionals and their organizations, navigate, support, and nurture meaningful conversations and create a greater space of inclusion and belonging in the workspace.
Wonderful, Carrie. Thank you so much. And, RR and Carrie, when I listen to both of you, I see that both of you are so convinced about HR leaders embracing coaching competencies for becoming more effective. But one question that remains in my head, and by definition, in the responsibility of HR function, the person has to be judgmental, evaluative. RR, you mentioned that the HR person can write that if somebody is not performing, that, okay, stay out of the bus, let somebody else do it. So HR person is in an evaluative mode quite often and needs to be. And coaching requires that you suspend your judgments. You have no bias of your own, and you're open and you're listening. So how does the person balance these conflicts which are inherent in the role and the coaching competencies? And RR, and after that, Carrie, I would love to hear both of you on this subject.
Wonderful. I think 2-3 responses to this very challenging role of an HR professional.
Right.
One, of course, is that like any profession, we need to manage paradoxes. And therefore, how do you actually sort of become more aware of one's own unconscious biases?
Right.
And how do you seek out for more data?
Right.
And it could be in terms of both performance and potential related data.
Yes.
And therefore, one's capacity to suspend judgment rather than being hasty. I think that requires a great deal of self awareness and self control. And the second, of course, has to do with balancing the needs of the organization and the needs of the individual.
Yeah.
Many a time it appears that some of us in HR profession tend to sort of tilt in favor of organizational priorities and requirements.
Right.
And sometimes if the CEO is a very strong guy and is actually calling the shots, we sometimes don't give equal weightage and consideration for the individual and the context in which the individual is operating.
So true. So true.
I remember a particular episode where a CEO was saying to me at a point of time that, look, my CFO is irrelevant and we are going to sort of ask him to get off the bus. And the simple question was that, look, when you look at the last 3 years track record, the man is so good. And how come that you have suddenly chosen to take this action? His reaction was that in the course of last 3-6 months, I've got lots of issues coming up from Hong Kong and from my team. And then we are unable to actually understand what is going on in his mind. So the next question was that, have you ever found time to have a conversation with him? 3 days later, he calls up and he tells me that, look, what happened? It would have been one of the most serious omissions and commissions I would have indulged in had I not actually listened to both the head and the heart of this gentleman. Because what he discovered was that he lost his father when he was hardly 6 months old. And his mother chose not to get married and resettle. And her entire focus of attention was to bring up this young man. And he himself chose not to invite another woman into his life.
Right.
And just about 3 months ago, the mother was diagnosed as having crossed stage 2. And therefore, it is a matter of 6 months. And the clock in his life has come to a stop. These are therefore very, very deep and important issues which people confront. So to come back, final point, I think the CHRO or the senior leaders of human resource function must be able to balance the dynamics of organizational needs and that of individual set of circumstances. Deeper understanding and connect are very vital.
So balancing is the answer. And that requires self-awareness, control. Absolutely. And going back to you, Carrie, and then, in fact, after listening to Carrie, we will go to audience. We've had over 50 participants, and I'm sure they would have put forward some questions. Arindan, may I request you to be ready with the questions you may have picked up from the audience, but let's hear to Carrie first about her thoughts about conflict that I sense between the HR role and the coaching competencies.
I will just keep this very short because I think RR provided such a great response, is that balance, right? And to go along with that balance, that clarity of when it's really important to use coaching competencies, and when it's important to be clear that you're not, and having clarity around that while you're balancing the different tools for professional practice in an HR role. I think that's really important. But RR said it best. I can't add much to that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Carrie. Yes, it's a very delicate between the multiple hats which HR professional has to wear, and the answer lies in balancing and keeping clarity as to what he or she is doing at a point in time. So thank you. Arindan, please tell us where are we with the audience? What questions have they got?
Yeah.
for us.
So I really thank audience Vinita Joseph for almost put almost 6-7 questions, and she would have got
6-7 question. All
yeah,
right.
and she
Okay.
has got almost 4-5 questions answers. So I'm picking up some questions which was very interesting. You'll be able to see that in the screen as well.
Yes.
She's asking that, yeah, as a HR head, there may be many models floating in the company, right, as
Yeah.
part of improvement or initiatives and other things. How does the coaching can be integrated as a strong process of transformation? I think, and what are the some blind spots HR need to be aware of? Because there could be the old ones happening, there can be the new ones coming. How can we standardize coaching is a real initiative which can transform organization?
And Arindam, thanks. But what is the meaning of UPR? I see with
Yeah,
purpose.
I want the Vinita to expand that in the chat box.
So,
Vinita.
right, Vinita, please clarify. And in the meantime, RR Carey, who would like to take this up to respond?
Unconditional positive regard. Okay.
Yeah. Unconditional positive regard. That was quick, Vinita. Thank you so much. Okay. So, RR Carey. Okay, RR, you are on a mute. RR, you are on a mute.
Yeah. I
Now you're
didn't
good.
mute, but I'm sure that Arvindan has done it very
Oh,
nicely.
Arindam is
Oh
playing
no.
tricks with
Actually,
us.
I
Arindam
cannot
is
mute
playing tricks with us.
anybody, any speaker. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, my
All right,
apologies.
you're loud and clear now.
Yeah, no, I'm not very clear about the question, honestly. So if
Oh, is it?
Carrie has been able to grapple with it, can we ask her to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm fully interpreting the question correctly, but there are a couple of roadblocks that I think HR professionals need to be aware of when trying to implement coaching in a consistent and thorough way across an organizational culture. One of the things that we've touched on some of these already, but one of the things that can be one of the biggest roadblocks, and was actually came out in some research that ICF did with the Human Capital Institute, is that senior leaders may not see the relevance and importance of coaching and may not be invested in integrating coaching within the culture of the organization. That can be a huge roadblock. So
Right.
having some understanding of that and some strategies to address it, right?
Yeah.
Another key roadblock for integrating coaching within the culture of an organization can be the financial constraints. Having coaching as a dedicated line item is really important, and sometimes that takes a whole lot of advocacy, particularly when an organization and what organization doesn't have limited resources, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that it's resourced in an appropriate way so that it can be successful. And then a third roadblock that can exist for HR leaders as they're trying to advocate for the integration of coaching within their organization is really being able to measure and report on the return on investment of coaching. And that's really important, and it's really complex. So those are three roadblocks that I've seen that have come out of some of our research, and I hope that's helpful. I hope it answers the question.
Arvind, if you allow me, I can just add on and build on to what Carrie said. The fourth one that I would say is, can the HR professional create a pipeline of playing coaches? The concept of playing coaches is someone who is doing the job and still being a coach. And also, can you practice
while playing the job?
And can they also embrace reverse coaches?
Right.
There are young, talented professionals who are coming into our organizational life. And in order to rapidly promote the integration of coaching and organization, can we invite some of the youngsters? There is an old saying, when you are young, you learn from the old. And when you are old, you learn from the young. So why not we practice in real life?
Yeah. And RR, you had mentioned about the shift from selling style to asking and listening. So that's very coach-like. And if HR person can display that shift, that he or she is now asking question and listening, then perhaps the appropriate culture will be set.
Beautiful.
So thanks, RR. Yes, Arindam, over to you.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize, RR. Yeah, there could be an error when I was clicking the message on stage. Your window also would have popped up to mute. Yeah, sorry for that.
Okay, now Carrie's window is on
Yeah,
the mute.
next.
Okay.
Yeah. Next question, how do we integrate coaching competency in the education system? So when you are recruiting management trainees or who are entering, can we have a system where they get the all the knowledge before they come to the company? I think that could be the generalized question here.
MBA curriculum, in particular, you're talking about how do you integrate coaching competencies into education system, say an MBA curriculum in particular?
I think, Gary, if you allow me to go ahead, and Arvind, sadly, coaching as a development intervention and themes around coaching are not figuring even in specialized HR schools. Leave aside the MBAs and the general MBA stream, where some people may choose to specialize human resource function. So I would really say that there is a case for bringing in the whole dimension of coaching and development in a very broader and deeper sort of manner as part of the curriculum for HR professionals. So I agree with Hari's point.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, Arindam, next question, please.
Yeah, very interesting question. It was answered, but it could be more specific now. What makes organizations source external coaches? What could be the key criteria of choosing an external coaches when many people within the organization term themselves as an internal coach?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a great question. And RR, do you mind if I jump in on this one? And I'll be brief.
Sure, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
One of the things that I think is important to recognize is why would you want both internal coaches and external coaches? And one of the things is there are some limitations when using internal coaches, and it has to do with some of the nuances that have been referenced this morning in terms of the relationship between that internal coach and the person that they are coaching. Sometimes that's not always the best fit. And sometimes having external coaches who are from outside of the organization with external abilities and ability to kind of think and vision and interact with employees can broaden the horizon of the possibilities for that coaching conversation, but also doesn't present some of the limitations in terms of the coach-client relationship that can exist within an organization. And I will be really biased in my thoughts on how do you source an external coach. And I would say, look at that coach's credentials. Ensure that you are working with a coach who is trained, who has demonstrated the knowledge, skill, has the experience. And one of the best ways to do that is by looking at the credentials that they may have earned. To look for an ICF credential, I think, is really important. There are some other professional coach credentials on the market, but that's a really great way to show that someone has independently demonstrated their knowledge, skill, and ability to be a proficient and effective coach.
Yeah, wonderful. And we've got last 5 minutes, Arindan. So please come up with the next question.
Yeah, next question, Vinita Joseph. In startup ecosystem, coaching is not seen as an option among leadership, and many choose mentoring to coaching. So any thoughts on that? How do we leverage as a coach in these areas?
May I respond to Arvind? No, I think it's a very fair observation, because startups, the level of intensity and also the time horizon for you to accomplish is so compressed that a mentor is often preferred because he or she brings a certain experiential background, which in fact enables and empowers the startup team. Whereas coaching is a process which takes its own time, whereas mentors play a multiple role of being an advisor, someone who actually sort of transfers the enormous wisdom and insights about that particular sector where somebody is getting into a startup arena. So I presume that is the reason why mentors are more preferred. It doesn't mean that in private equity, for example, where the companies on which the private equity or venture capitals have invested, they are not welcoming coaches. They indeed welcome coaches to help and develop second and third generation family members. And obviously, I suppose certification becomes very important.
Indeed.
Yeah, we will go to the next one, Arvind. It was specifically to one of your colleague who has worked with you in the period of 1985 to 2007. He says that during that time when coaching competencies were not prevalent, but when he reflects back today, that time itself, there was a culture of coaching in that company. How did that was achieved during that time?
Right. So, Hari, thanks for bringing this up and breaking my role from moderator to responding to this specific question, since this is specific to Xerox. Well, actually, if you look at coaching competencies, they are fundamental. So if you remove the label, a good leader should display these competencies.
Exactly.
Right? If you talk about asking, listening, asking powerful questions, trusting, all of these are so fundamental to being a good leader, regardless to which function you are in. And we were fortunate in Xerox that we had opportunity to groom leaders who played and who displayed these kind of competencies. The word coaching was not so popular those days, so we did not use the word, but the culture was very much, and I think the leadership through quality, which the TQM culture which was brought in, is specifically encourage managers and leaders to become facilitators, which is today being called being coaches. So, Arindam, we have 1 minute more to go.
Yeah, I will just push one more question, very interesting question, which RR can take. So in one of the sessions, we heard from CHRO that they work with a predefined pool of coaches. They have relationship going. RR spoke about learning from young and vice versa. How can new coaches and young coaches make a breakthrough in this? When there is a sort of a tie-up with the CHRO with the old coaches, or maybe some sort of a fixed coaches in the company.
Gary, would you like to go ahead?
Sure, thank you so much. So there are great opportunities for coaches to kind of break through in their practice. And again, ICF is standing by, ready to help new coaches as they develop and begin their coaching journey. One way to do that is once a coach has completed coach training, there are opportunities for a coach to engage in peer coaching, to gain experience, to practice their new skills, to build their capacity as coaches. Mentor coaching can be a really powerful tool, and coaching supervision can be a powerful tool to a new coach to help develop their skills further in the core competencies, to also engage in reflective practice and see how they might learn for future practice. Those are important opportunities. And of course, ongoing learning. The completion of coach training is really important, but it is not the end of the road for a coach. Ongoing learning and development is important. Participating in events like this, India Conclave, to learn from and network with seasoned coaches, also really, really important to help break through. We also have one thing that I will mention that ICF Global provides is a business development series. that helps new coaches as they're building the business elements of their coaching practice. And it provides a nice way for coaches to learn not just how they can use coaching skills, but how they can market themselves in an increasingly competitive and crowded field. So let us know if we can support you in that journey. We are dedicated and committed to doing just that.
Fantastic, Carrie. So Arvind, you want to round up the whole conversation with few of thoughts or maybe points? Yeah, with the time.
There are so many thoughts and
Yeah.
so many questions.
Okay.
And I'm sure audience would equally have many more questions to ask. I have many more questions to ask. But this invigorating conversation, I thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you, Arindam, for the opportunity. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, RR, for candidly sharing your views. And thank you, audience, for being with us.
And thank you all. Thank you, the entire panel. What a homework, what a preparations you people did. I was really feeling that we have to go a long way to catch up with you people. And thank you, RR, thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Arvind, for this wonderful panel session, which will be remembered for many, many years to come. Thank you very much.